somebody in the line? Fine. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Children's Scrutiny Panel of Kirklees Council. For anybody watching live stream, apologies for the slight delay to the meeting. The slight delay to meeting, so we're starting at 11:15 on Friday, the 13th of March 2020. Just do a quick round of introductions at the beginning of the meeting. So I'm Andrew Marchington, Chair of the Children's Scrutiny Panel.
Kilroy, Governance Officer.
Tony Bromley, Volunteer Co-optee.
Councillor Paul White, Panel Member.
Councillor Paul Davis, Panel Member.
Dale O'Neill, Volunteer Co-optee.
Councillor Richard Smith, Panel Member.
Martin Wilby, Education, Places and Access.
Joanne Sanders, Service Director for Learning and Early Support.
Julie Bragg, Head of Service for Children in Care and the Care Leaver Service.
Good morning, Liam McShane, Service Director, Family Support and Child Protection.
Morning, Tom Brailsford, Service Director for Resources Improvement and Partnerships.
Viv Kendrick, Cabinet Member for Children and Young People's Service, observing.
Thank you very much, everybody. We received apologies from Councillor Amanda Pinnock. So if we on to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting, page 1 of your agenda of your papers. So can we approve those as a correct record of the meeting on the 17th of January? Yeah, thank you, everybody. Okay, I think any matters arising have already been dealt with or will be dealt with during the meeting. Have any members of the panel got an interest to declare? That is none. All of the items that we hold today will be in public session. No reason to exclude members of the public. If anything crops up during the meeting where we need to do that, we'll move the relevant motions. Have we received any notifications of deputations or petitions? We haven't. And there is a section for public question time. If anybody, no members of the public to do that. So, on to item 7, page 9 of the papers, number and age of children in care. Julie.
Okay, so as we can see, we've had an increase again in January of the numbers of children in care. We're currently, at the end of January, at 672. We continue to closely monitor and closely scrutinise in terms of our legal gateway panel to ensure that we're confident that actually the children that are coming into care, it is appropriate for them to come into care. So that is a continuum. Just to give you an example, in terms of in January, out of the increase in from December of 13. Just to give an example, we have recently had a number of sibling groups coming into care, which can often have an impact on our numbers. As an example of the January figures, 2 of those, we had 2 sibling groups of 5 children. So you can see from the 13 increase, actually it is 2 families. So it just gives you a little bit of a flavour of in terms of the increase in numbers. We do and continue, which I just want to bring to attention, is that in terms of the work of children leaving care, it is still on an increasing positive trend, and we, in terms of children living rather than care orders with family members, we continue to increase our numbers of children at final hearings and at final orders, where children live with family members subject to SGO, which is a much more normal situation for children living with family members. So those numbers are continuing to increase. We also are continuing to increase in terms of the numbers of children who live on care orders with the parents, as we call placement with parents. So we continue to reduce that. So numbers of children coming in care, but we still, at the other side of that, in terms of children leaving care, continues to be a positive trend. In terms when we look at the ages of our children in care, and as previously said, the children under 4, it's more likely and highly likely that they will not remain in the care of the local authority in that age group. In particular, with children will have a permanence plan for adoption. And when we look at the numbers of the ages between 11 to 15, a lot of the focus within the service at the moment is looking at reunification. We do know that children, as they move towards their puberty and towards their teenage years, often them being in the care of the local authority will gravitate towards moving back to live with parents. So the introduction of our reunification model within the service is helping with that process, rather than us dealing with what might be a reactive crisis, a child returns to live with care of parents. We've been much more proactive in doing a good, thorough reunification assessment to make sure that when that happens, it's the right thing for the child, it's the right thing for the parents, and less likely to break down. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, fine. Yeah. Questions or comments? Dale.
I made the same comment at the last meeting that I'm concerned about the number of children under 1 being taken into care. I hear what you say about that age group and the subsequent one, that their children may be available for adoption. But I know that there is a problem, there's a shortage of adoptive parents, and I'm just registering again my extreme concern at the constant rise in this number of children less than a year being taken into care.
Do you want to? Elaine, thank you.
I think it's a fine balance, because first and foremost you have to ensure that children are safeguarded, and our whole aim is to ensure that children remain with their families. I think Julie made reference to actually a lot of our children now are, if they're not initially placed with family, because we have to do viability assessments, as soon as we possibly can, as they enter into the care system, what we do is ensure that we've checked all extended family. And that's why we are seeing an increased number of our SGOs. So special guardianship orders are children that actually are placed with family members. It's the next thing close to adoption. And that actually has gone up to, we're at 380. So that's actually a significant rise. I am the individual that makes agency decision maker around children that are adopted, and actually one of my robust checks is about that we have explored all family members before we make that final decision to ensure that children stay within their family. We also have a discussion at that meeting around the timeliness of adoption and what period of time children will be waiting, to ensure that they're not waiting extended periods of time. So at that latter point, because that is a really, really critical decision, I am very robust in my decision making and ensure that there are no delays for children.
Thank you, Elaine. Do you want to come back, Dale? Is that fine? Paul.
In terms of the causes of why we're taking children in, obviously domestic abuse is something the council is really focusing on. Can you give us a view of how many of these children, or split-wise, would be because of domestic abuse within the families?
Often, and it's really difficult to say that when children come into care, it can be multiple factors. So domestic abuse may be one of those factors, but then there may be other issues alongside that, mental health issues, drug misuse. So, and often the majority of the children that come into the care of the local authority, it is due to neglect, and again, that can include multiple factors. We have an understanding and idea of those multiple factors, but I think it's really difficult to be specific about one particular area in relation to domestic abuse.
Paul.
I'm just moving on to the children and young people placed more than 20 miles outside Kirtlees. So it's one of my things. And we've spoken a lot about it, and the figures have been coming down, but disappointingly, it's gone up this last time. So I just wonder whether there was an underlying story there, or perhaps reassure us that the figures are continuing to come down.
I think that some of the issues, obviously, we have had an increase in terms of the children of numbers coming into care, which then means in terms of looking for a suitable, appropriately matched placements for those children, we have to, in some occasions, have to go to external fostering agencies to look for those placements. So I think it's fair to say numbers have increased, which we've had then to look at the wilder field in terms of looking for placement availability, but it isn't always negative. And if I can just give you an example of a young person recently, where we have been trying for about 18 months to secure a long-term placement for this young man. We have been successful in that, and as an example, it is more than 20 miles from the area. But when we make that decision, it's very much around what is a good match for that young person, in terms of education, how we manage his education, in terms of foster carers' willingness to be involved with education. Just as an example, that young man, he's currently in year 6 in education, and so part of our transition planning and part of looking at the matching is to maintain him in the education that he's in at the moment, because that's what we need to do. But part of that transition will be to look at him moving then to in year 7 to education, with what we're looking at is being his long-term foster carers. So sometimes the figures are there, but sometimes there are stories behind those figures, and that's just one example of one of those stories. Because when we're looking at placements for children, whether it be short-term or long-time, there's a whole process goes into that in terms of looking at matching and looking at education, and look at a variety of things for that young person in order to make sure that it's successful.
To follow up on that. Sorry, Elaine. Yeah.
I just wanted to say as well, I'm involved in that decision making, so any decision around a child placed beyond 20 miles, and I think if you look from their home address, sometimes it's not necessarily so distant because actually geographically Kirklees is so vast. Sometimes you're talking about being over the border, so we have that conversation, because the old conversation as well is about the social worker being able to visit and so to keep up that relationship. So we do have a lot of discussion around where the placement is and our accessibility is. So there's lots of conversations. The decisions are not taken lightly.
Yeah.
I'll just follow it up. I know we had some informal conversations about having an ambition of perhaps with 5 years' time being down almost to naught. So it's sort of like just watching whether that is actually realistic or not.
Yeah, I think what might be useful, I mean, we've got to the point where we've got a draft sufficiency strategy now, so we're looking very closely at the needs of our foster carers locally, how we can work differently, and a new kind of residential model that me and Elaine will be producing. So I think actually in terms of our ambition about no child is placed outside Kirklees and how we get to that, I think it would be useful probably for us to bring that back, our plans to scrutiny around how we're going to kind of transform fostering, what we're going to do to make sure we can try and achieve that aim.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm just looking at pages 12 and 13. I think that looking at the information we provided about post 16, I think it really is useful. Looking at the number of young people placed in Calderdale, Bradford, and Leeds City Council. You just imagine along the northern part of the borough, which would be more important than placing somebody probably a lot closer to home than if they've been placed in the southern part of the borough. So I think that information gives a flavour of what you've said, Elaine, about just across the border. So.
Yeah, I would just like to assure you as well, we're actually undertaking a piece of work at the moment around our post-16 provision and working along people coming and working in Kirklees to provide that provision. So there is a piece of work so there's a tendering exercise being undertaken around post-16 provision within Kirklees, recognising as well some of the vulnerabilities of those young people. So again, that will be something that we'll be able to bring back in the future.
Yeah, Rich.
Thanks. Can I just pick up on two of the points that were made about people outside Kirklees? So there are some instances where I feel there's the children should be placed a long way away from Kirklees because of, you know, the issues that they've experienced. So if they're in a situation where, you know, they need to be removed to safeguard them, you know, I mean, I completely get what Paul's saying, but, you know, is that reflected in these figures, or is it a totally separate discussion about, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Okay, so yes, there are occasions, there are very few, where we do take the decision to actually place a young person at distance, and I do understand what you're saying, and we have got a particular young person for a period of time as being placed in rural Scotland, for example, and that was about the potential risks that he was facing. That's a real challenge in terms of culture and identity. And what we've had to do is very much balance that risk. What I can say really recently, he's just actually being safely returned to the care of his mother. And that will be now, and he's in a very, very good place. So for that period of time, although I think he found it challenging at times, that was the right decision for him. And again, it's that decision that we take that's well informed, you know, based on a lot of information that's available to us, and ensuring that first and foremost the risks are addressed.
Thank you for questions and for the responses and the presentation. Again, just to finish on this, again, recognising, appreciate Julie saying about the family, the two families, the children who were brought in, about, but there is just keeping a watching brief on the rising trend, and if that is, I know there's national factors as well, but how we're managing that as well, and being aware of that. I think panel again, just picking those things up and over time. Thank you. Okay. Right, we're on to item 8, one of the regular updates on Almonbury Community School. Martin, are you going to on that?
So if I give you a quick summary of the contents of the report, if that would help. I think it's the first point I want to make is the partnership of local schools remains strong to support Almonbury Community School pupils, their current pupils. The strength of that partnership resulted, I think, as we reported verbally previously, that every pupil had been offered a place at a local school to match their preference where they'd made such a preference. We've talked previously about a small number of children or pupils that were involved in a different process, whether that was an admission appeal or whatever it might be. That number is now reduced to just one child that's involved in a different process, and it's something that we are monitoring that situation to ensure that they receive an appropriate school place. Just to cover uniform support, we reported previously, I think, that we were looking at a uniform package to support families where pupils had already moved. So we're outside the planned managed transitions, and we offered an opportunity for parents to apply for a contribution towards uniform costs. We've received a number of applications, and those payments are in the bank system right now. They'll be landing sort of any day now with those parents. And for those families where they've got children that are still to transition, we've got a slightly different approach where we'll be issuing vouchers so that they can claim free uniform items from shops in Huddersfield. So that is in place and ready to run nearer the time of transition. Admission arrangements, you may recall that we had temporary admission arrangements in place. The reason for that was that for 2021, this coming September, we had to apply to the school's adjudicator for that period of time because admission arrangements had already been determined for that year. So that meant we could only apply for that one period. That's why they were temporary. Through the normal admission consultation process, the annual process that takes place in the winter from usually about the beginning of December through to February. We consulted on making those arrangements permanent, or as permanent as they can be until somebody changes them. So you might call them normalised, and that has been through the process, and those arrangements where the priority admission areas of the partner schools have been extended to cover the previous admission area, secondary admission area that Almonbury Community School covered. So just for example, King James now has a wider catchment area, which includes the priority admission area of Almonbury Primary School and All Hallows. So that's just one of the examples. There's been quite a lot of activity supporting staff at the school, and we've included some detail in the report here to give you a summary. Each staff member has been aligned to either primary or secondary phase of the school, and that alignment has been based on where they carry out the majority of their duties. And staff have had the opportunity to comment on that alignment, and those alignments have now been confirmed. Following that piece of work, the staff in the primary school have now moved in. I think the report says that there'll be a review starting shortly. That review has actually already started, so we're in a consultation process at this time with primary staff about a new staffing structure, that will be fit for purpose for a one-form primary school, a one-form entry primary school into the future, and to ensure that that is sustainable for the future. So that process obviously has to take its course. For the secondary, those staff aligned to the secondary phase, we have, or our HR colleagues have been able to agree a deployment process with the partner schools in the area that will be taking more pupils. And a range of vacancies from those 3 partner schools have already been shared with secondary school staff. So they've got the opportunity to apply for those vacancies before they go out to the normal open market. So that is in progress. That was the initial phase of vacancies. We are expecting further opportunities to be released by those schools in the future, including some temporary ones potentially. Ofsted monitoring I've included in here because I think we probably gave a verbal update last time rather than a written update, and because of the lead-in time of publication, this sometimes happens. I don't think I need to cover that too much, but it's in there just for completeness. I think there was a request at the last time we brought an update to you for some more information about the Academy Trust that would be taking on board Almonbury Community School as a primary school, but also that they are taken on Newsham High School. So we've included in the report, and that trust is Impact Multi-Academy Trust. So we've included in the report some details about the schools that are currently in that MAT, and some details about their mission statement and vision. And I think it's just worth highlighting that we're working very positively with that Multi-Academy Trust on all those conversions, and of course some of the work that's taking place at Almonbury at the moment. I think the only other thing really just to pick up on is I think in the report we talked about some communications that were planned with parents after National Offer Day, Year 7 National Offer Day, which was last week. Those communications did go out, and I think I've shared them with the scrutiny panel members, and they've been reported locally in the press and so on. I think probably the highlight from those is really about how King James will operate the Fernside site, the current Almonbury Community School building, the secondary building, and you know, that was about them placing educating all their Year 7 intake in one place at Fernside, but also retaining there the current Year 10s that will become year 11 next year, while rather than transition them to a different site for the last year of their education, they are keeping them on the Ferdon site. And the other age groups are to integrate into their Helensgate site from September. That is the plan. And some engagement sessions of, I think there was one last night or the night before, and there are more planned for next week and the week after. King James meeting their parents and future parents. So if parents have got questions, they can ask them directly to the school, and we'll be supporting some of those events where needed.
Thank you, Martin, for the update, and thank you for circulating the letters. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to see that. Just picking up on some of the things that you've included in the report, I mean, it's really good. You know, some of the questions that Scrutiny had raised about tracking pupils, and in fact we're now down to one pupil who's not got a place for September, and that's been a different process. I think we appreciate some of that. The uniform support that was raised by parents, I think at the meeting, one of the meetings I went to, that's been picked up. I think that's appreciated. And the issue around staffing as well, about concerns for staff at both of the schools. It's interesting to hear that as well. I think just the one thing I picked up about, it's again the news of about the engagement events. It would be, if we know when those are, it might be useful for one or two of us to pop along to those. I found the one at Allenbury Community School really used just as an observer to listen to what was going on. That was good. And again, interesting to hear what's happening at both the Fernside site. That seems to be really creative. But if we can, in any way, was appropriately seeing how that's working out over the next 12 to 18 months, that might just help us, with some of our understanding of not just what's happening at Allenbury Community School, but how we some of the issues about improving educational outcomes that we're just generally interested in as well. Sorry, Joanne. I'll bring the panel in.
Thank you. Those are helpful comments. A couple of things just to maybe as points of clarification, and it was probably picking up on Martin's first point. What's really crucial here is the roles and the partnerships. So the local authority really want to support this partnership of schools, and there are some things that the local authority is best placed to enable, but actually some of those engagement sessions now are being school-led, because actually I couldn't talk about the curriculum content at King James's. The best person who's placed to do that are King James's leaders and staff, and answer those questions for parents. So I think I just wanted to emphasise that we're really grateful to King James's for making those opportunities as soon as possibly they could. And I think in all the conversations that we're having collaboratively, it absolutely is about putting the educational outcomes of youngsters first and foremost in decision making, and we've got to keep talking to parents and youngsters throughout this process. And I think we really welcome the opportunity for Scrutiny to come and have a look at how that's working through over the next academic year. And just maybe something else that we've not lost sight of, we are thinking about how we celebrate Allenbury Community School and bring that, because it will change in its current form, and we need to make sure we mark that appropriately for youngsters and staff accordingly. So it just need to give that reassurance that it's the combination of the collective that is helping us pick up every aspect for parents. We continue to engage with ward members who are being constructive in that respect, and we're still meeting with a smaller group of parents who give us some really good feedback and help, and they're helping us to get it right. So thank you.
Joanne's just covered a few points I was going to raise, and the first thing, but I have got a question. But before my question, just a couple of comments. First, thanks, because this is an extremely difficult situation, and I think the officers, yourselves, and your team have done a really good job in ensuring that this has been done in this collaborative and partnership fashion. And I know, Joanne, you emphasise time and time again the partnership between the schools, and it is, it's working. And I think going forward, this is a good example of not that we want to close schools, but it's a good example of how we engage, I think, within the education sector and also with parents. And I think lessons, as we've all learned from this one going forward. So that I think that's really, really constructive and really good. One quick question, and hopefully I'm not going to destroy all of this now. I noticed in the report you did not mention transport. I know that was an issue that was raised. We talked, Martin, a little bit at Schools Forum about this. Is that something that's now finalised, gone away, no longer an issue?
I think there's probably a little bit more work to do on that. I think it's probably fair to quantify it. We've probably had 3 or 4 inquiries about transport from parents, so it's not a huge it's not a huge sort of or a widespread sort of challenge for people. We're gauging from that. There are actually existing processes for school transport, and I think actually ward members have been quite helpful in suggesting using those normal processes. So I think there's probably some communication we need to do with 1 or 2 families about that, if I'm being straight with you on that. But there is an application process, but then probably most importantly, there's an appeal process, and that appeal process can take into consideration a wide range of circumstances. So I think in most cases, under the normal application process, parents would not be eligible because of the distance and the offer of the school places. But the appeal process is there, established, and can look at that. In each case where we've had an inquiry about transport, it's been from a parent that has made some decisions individually to move children earlier than our sort of managed transfer process. That's just a characteristic of those inquiries that's worth mentioning.
And just to say, we've not lost sight of transport. Just there is still some logistical implications from what will happen for youngsters next year. So we've got it clearly in view, and we're working through that with the affected schools. So it's that individual and it's that wider opportunity for sustainable travel to schools and making that work when King James will operate across more than one site for a period of time. So thank you for asking us.
Regarding the children that will stay at Fernside to do their Year 11 year, I think that is the most fair option for those. But regarding the staff, does that mean that their jobs are only secure for 1 more year, or is there a deployment agreement for after that year for those members of staff who've stayed behind for those children?
I think what we have to be really clear about is that the operation from that site will not it is a different entity. So it will be King James operating from that site with staff employed by King James. So I talked about the vacancies that King James has shared with Almonbury staff. So any staff that operate from that site will be King James's staff, and they will have to have sufficient staff to manage a curriculum for those Year 11 pupils. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's kind of a little bit different. But it will be managed and run by King James, all that.
Really, it's just wondering whether those staff have a job security from King James, or whether it would be a temporary contract, because after that year, would there be enough children in the King James Year 11s to need that number of staff?
So my understanding is that King James will, so far they've advertised permanent posts. I understand that they will look to advertise some temporary posts. Beyond that, it's a matter for the school rather than the council, but obviously we are supporting council staff working in Almonbury Community School through that process.
It's very reassuring, lots of this report, so I'm echoing some of Paul's comments here, because clearly there's been some exceptional work from staff members. If what we're reading, if there's nothing underlying that we might hear from elsewhere, because obviously there was a lot of noise a number of months ago, negative noise. I'm not picking up much negative noise at all anymore, so I think that might be panel members as well. I was also looking for some reassurance around the staffing, picking up Tony's point there, because it looks very positive here, and it's, you know, all staff have been realigned and so on and so forth. But it just felt to me that there was a risk of maybe quite a number of staff not being found permanent posts and things like that. So I was looking for a bit of reassurance on that. Maybe there's nothing more that you can say on that, actually.
So I think it's early days at this moment in time, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. What we're doing is working with the schools that are growing to create opportunities. What we've said really clearly to staff is we want to retain great staff working locally if we can. The people are individuals. So again, what we've tried to do is, I suppose, a similar approach as we have done with youngsters, which is about creating opportunities. It's whether they choose those. There are other opportunities, but each one's individual. What we're trying to do is be open and fair and transparent. I think we will be working on this throughout. The primary and secondary phase staff are in a different position at this moment in time, but we obviously are working collaboratively with Almonbury Community School and the 3 partner schools. I think further information will be forthcoming, but it's just the stage in which we're at. Just to bear in mind as well, some of this we must work in conjunction with the governing body, which is the IEB of Almonbury Community School, but we continue to work together, and it is still quite early days.
Thanks, Chair. Partly unpicking this small group of parents and just wondering who they are and why it's gone down to a small group. I was interested in sort of feedback, really, of the process and everything that has gone on. So are they involved with a sort of formal feedback process, or is there some sort of formal feedback process that you've put in place for the whole thing that's going on? So eventually we've got some sort of idea from parents and pupils how they found the whole thing. Are you with me on that?
So let me check whether I've understood you. So obviously when we were going through a decision-making process, there was a group of parents that felt very passionately and attended meetings, and they have requested that we continue to engage, which we have done. It's very much about that opportunity to continue a dialogue. We've not formalised it, so there's not a big invitation in terms of anybody wants to come. There's a key lead and we let them coordinate. In terms of communications, what we're very clear about is when we communicate, we go to, we've listened to a lot of feedback from yourselves, from the process. We're making every effort to do belt and braces, and that everybody is hearing messages in the right order and at the right time, because rumours are quite unhelpful. So, for example, we're using electronic communications as well as letters where appropriate. We're supporting the school so that they're on the website and text messages, the normal methodologies that schools would use. I think certainly what we've been able to do is, because they're representative, is test a little bit of communication. So we want to be able to make it as simple as possible, and sometimes some of this is quite complicated. So things like the information we shared about uniform, we just were able to take a bit of a sounding before we release that. But we've got to make sure that everybody's getting a clear and consistent message. But it's also a good test temperature check, because some of the anxieties or concerns or worries we're able to listen to and then respond to. So it is true co-production. There was always the opportunity for those parents who wanted to find out more to register with us. So we've got a distribution list as well and there might be prospective parents. So that came up from one of our ward member colleagues saying, what about primary for prospective parents? So that's something we've been giving some consideration to. So there's no set process, we're just being quite responsive because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I apologise for my clumsy question there. Where I was trying to lead to was, obviously there's a lot of insight and feedback coming in, and then we're collecting it in one place so that next time we've got the learning in one place. That's all I was trying to move to.
Yes, because there's a very small core of us, and we are capturing that. So absolutely, can assure you of that.
Dale.
And just following on to that, after all the transitions have taken place, will you then be able to give an impression of how you've been able to meet an absolutely outstanding number of difficult objectives, but highly laudable objectives? I think in the future, in the long-term future, it would be good if we could look back and see how it was achieved, because I'm sure you're going to do it.
So I think very early on and through the decision-making process, what we said is all of these types of situations are different, but what we've done here is we've absolutely recognised the complexity of this as a programme of work, focused on the youngsters and what support we wrap around those youngsters. We've been given a mandate by our portfolio holders and our cabinet that those youngsters and their needs must come first and shouldn't be compromised. We've got a programme plan in place. We're capturing that, and that programme plan in itself is being informed by previous school reorganisations that we've undertaken. But this one is quite unique, and absolutely it's about leaving that organisational memory for. There will be a next time, maybe not in quite the same way, but that's the world in which we occupy. So yes, we are capturing that, and minuting programme meetings. So can assure you of that.
I look forward to seeing that.
Any other comments or questions? No. Again, just thank you for the presentations, thank you for the questions. I think anything where it's particularly difficult, there's lessons to be learned. And for all children, transitions from school to school or place to place are difficult, and some of the engagement you've done with parents and recognising anxieties, I'm sure we're going to be hopefully not in a difficult situation. This will be applicable in just more the situations that all children and parents find in. So thank you again. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 9, which is about the review of the work programme on page 27 of our papers. Sorry, get my thing. I'd just like to thank panel members and officers for the way that we've engaged with scrutiny process this year. A lot of us were new at the beginning of the municipal year. Thank you, Dale, for the continuity you've provided. Tony, were you new to the panel? Yeah, so we've learnt a lot. And that what's the key phrase for today? Co-production of that. Really hoping there's going to be some stability on the panel moving into the new municipal year, and we can follow some of the three themes through. I think I'll just repeat what we picked up quite early on, 3 areas of ways of scrutinising what we're doing. Partnerships across different areas of the council's work with children and young people come up time and time again. And we have been, I think, just a little bit of feedback for some of the visits we've done. I know a group of us went down to the youth offending team to speak to Richard Smith there, the lead there, and some officers. And actually we did, they'll be pleased to know, meet a young person who's involved with the youth offending team, some very frank and some really useful feedback on their experience of the system. So not pupils, but young person's voice was heard, and that was really, really useful. We balanced that again, so I think Paul and I went to a meeting of the Youth Offending Team Board, and again what I saw there is actually partners from, it's really pleasing for me having another hat on. Robert Scott from Kirklees Neighbourhood Housing was there to see them. The board was chaired by the police divisional commander. There were actually one or two other partners who I wasn't necessarily expecting from national organisations, so that corroborated some of that. So we're going to be looking at partnership working across a wide area of range issues in the coming year. And I think, again, visits and observations. Dale, did you want about how collecting evidence is really important? Do you want to say something about that at this stage?
I'm sorry, I'm having a lot of trouble with my tinnitus, so I'm not actually sure what you're asking me.
Right. I think there's a couple of things over the year that you've brought up that's been really important. One is about working to the Children's Services Improvement Plan, and we're going to try and do that. I'm not sure we can do that fully today, but we will be doing that because, again, those are the council's priorities for children and young people, and we can scrutinise that and actually help in the improvement journey. So the other thing that you brought up, Corey, was about the importance of having, we get some really good presentations to the panel, but what is the evidence that's backing up the presentations we're getting? So would you like to say something about that, please? Sorry.
Thank you, Andrew. It's not so much the lack of evidence to back up the reports, although occasionally there could be more. It's just that when it comes to our work programme, we are supposed to be assured, confident that, and there are 5 conditions, but we are never asked to provide evidence for being assured, confident, etc., and I believe that we should.
So I think over the next municipal year, we're going to be following those 3 key strands, looking at partnership working, visiting and observations, which seems to be working really well. And the 3rd key strand is about the data, how data is collected, and more importantly, how that's used to drive improvement outcomes. We're going to try and cross-reference that to the Children's Services Improvement Plan. I don't think we will have time to cross-reference everything. So the things we need to do within the Children's Improvement Plan is look at the key things and get a flavour of. And I think we've seen that in particular this morning. So if we look at on the work programme, page 27, item 1, special educational needs. We've looked at the progress that's been made with delivery of special educational needs outcomes for children and young people. We've had we had a panel meeting in September where we considered the report and update, but we've had an informal meeting this morning that actually had a really good example of how data has been collected and how that's been used to improve outcomes for children and young people. So, but there's all sorts of other areas of the plan that where that might happen. So the 6 strands I picked up, I think, from Mel, the Director for Children's Services, I think she called it the 6 tests. So having a functioning corporate services, stable leadership, continued improvement in the quality and effectiveness of practice, strong and supportive partnerships, compelling strategy for workforce, and effective performance information and quality assurance. So I am something slightly different. It seems to be a bit more straightforward. So what I'm not sure we're going to be able to do this morning, but we will come back to, is actually picking out particular areas where we're going to be able to follow the trends over. But some of that will have emerged over the periods. What if we can do for what remains of the meeting, probably 10-15 minutes, is actually if we look through the work programme as is, page 27, and actually go through what we want to... Are you heading off, Viv? Thank you. So special educational needs. Do we want to keep that as a formal report? We've had sort of reports every 6 months. We obviously want to keep a watching brief on that. Are we happy with keeping that as an informal reports back every 6 months or so, and then periodically we might want to bring that to the public meeting? So, okay. Paul, yeah, happy with that.
Perhaps as a suggestion, if we have it 6 monthly, but it's in the informal at one meeting and the next meeting it's
a more formal, yeah. I think also we can do visiting some of the SEND teams to corroborate some of the information we had in the presentation. Item 2 is the exploitation strategy. Again, we've got a further report on that at the panel meeting on the 17th of April. I think Mel, when she presented, was talking about how that we had a lot of work done on child sexual exploitation. We've got some of the cases coming through the courts at the third phase of cases coming through the courts in Kirklees through to the historic review. Seemed to be a really good piece of work moving that to an exploitation strategy, recognising that wider. And we could perhaps link, well, I wanted to keep a watching brief on that, actually see how it impacts on some of the other young people and impact on the lives of young people in the borough. So we probably need to keep that going at least for a little while, well longer. Okay. Right. Right, item 3, the Kirklees Children's Safeguarding Board. It's interesting hearing from Ronnie in the informal session about safeguarding work. I think there's a number of boards and partnerships we might want to scrutinise as a whole, rather than having specific pieces of work coming back. So we talked about the Children's Partnership. Children's Partnership, the Health and Wellbeing Board are going to have some responsibility for special educational needs, and some of the other. We've got the Corporate Parenting Board, which Richard is a member of, and we go to. So actually, we can just say, look, scrutinising partnerships as a cross-cutting piece of work, rather than having individual. Other than if there's a statutory obligation to come back to us, but that can be, at some stage. So, yeah, fine. That's item 3. Item 4, early support, partnership and edge of care. We had the presentation, and we've got a further consideration report coming back, and then we're probably in a better position to decide how we want to move forward with that after the April meeting. Number 5, the review of the improvement journey. I think that's what we're doing all the time, isn't it? Hopefully. We are all on board with the journey to outstanding for all of our children in Kirklees. So, again, rather than that being a specific piece of feedback, if we can, that can be a cross-cutting theme for next year. Are we okay with that? Does that yeah. Just says that. Okay. Now, I think that's what we're doing. Yeah, but it's not that we're not concerned about it. I think that's just... Sorry. It's what we do. Well, if we can phrase it in a way that... So rather than it being a separate item... Right. No. So it's just how so we can structure the scrutiny work that we do. Yeah. And we are reviewing the improvement journey, isn't it? Does it need to be a separate? Right. Bring. Yeah.
Just going to suggest it'll be included, but it'll be how it'll be presented in here. We'll just tidy it up a bit so that it is in there, but not necessarily as a separate heading, but it will be included. Is that all right?
I think so. Yeah. Is that all right? Well, it's the panel's. It's not mine. No, it's the panel's call. How do we feel? Go on, Paul. Dale. Well, I'll bring it. Well, yeah, Dale. Yeah.
The thing I would like to see is a physical representation of the evidence that we've gathered. I mean, it says that and gather evidence as part of holding the service to account. Now that could mean just whenever a report comes and we read it and listen to it, but I'm talking now as a voluntary co-optee, as a member of the public.
Yeah.
You know? And I, seeing this, would say, okay, so can I see this evidence? You know, surely the scrutiny panel should be held to account for being able to show that it's done what it's supposed to have set out to do. And if it says we should gather evidence as a member of the public, I want to be able to see that evidence.
Right. So it's the evidence. Yeah. So we as a panel need to be gathering evidence about, from where we started off when things were not where any of us want us to be. We've got a step along the road where things, Ofsted have said, which is an external objective test that is improving, but we want to move further than that. So, yeah, Paul,
I think we've had this discussion before, I think, about the improvement plan, how we link in.
Yeah.
I think there is still an issue. Whether it's on here or not is a debate as well. But I think in my own mind, I still feel we've got this issue of we have the improvement plan being pushed forward. I feel sometimes almost not on the periphery of it, that's the wrong word, but whether we have a formal part of our agenda every time which literally says these are the key issues that are being raised with the improvement plan. In a nutshell, if there are issues, if there are blockages, etc., I think that's where as a scrutiny panel we should be aware of that, and I think we have to go through a lot of data to get to that point. And I think we've talked about this before. So that's kind of much more about how the information is presented to us, I guess, but how we deal with it as well.
Yeah. I think this is really useful because very good at, scrutinising the information we get at a particular meeting, but we are also overview. And we do need a clear map of what we've done to gather evidence or a review of the journey where we have contributed to that. So I think, right, listen to what Tony, Paul, do you want to say? Paul, yeah.
Well, just picking up Paul's point, if we had some sort of overview that's sort of like a data dashboard, the sort of thing that you see, in other areas of our work outside this meeting, that in terms of the improvement plan, and I'm not sure whether there is there a headline data dashboard type document that we could see, and so that identifies.
Tom.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of data, and I think the conversations we've had before, it's a bit like an indicator set that tells us the health of the organisation and what those key performance indicators are. As I said earlier, me and Elaine were given a demonstration of Tableau, which does some of that, particularly around children's social care. And I guess the question for scrutiny would be, are we just talking about a data dashboard that tells us the health of the children's social care improvement plan, or do we want something that tells us the health of the SEND improvement plan that we've had today? So I think I think it's definitely something we could do quite easily now based on where our data's up to. But I just think we need a discussion about what you'd like that to look like. Because it could be you could be focusing on initial child protection conferences, you could be focusing on statutory compliance 3HC plans, but what would you like that to look like?
Because one of the things that sometimes I think we need to hold together is it's got to move on from meeting to meeting to meeting, doesn't it? So we could take the example of the number of looked after children. So we get the snapshots, but the trend is a rising trend. and we need to be aware. And sometimes we can lose that, and of course that's built on what's happened over the years. And then how do we map the improvement journey? I'm just a bit, again, we can get logged out. It's information and action management, isn't it? It's mapping, some sort of way of mapping what we're doing to help on the improvement journey. Right, I think we do need to... Sorry, Paul.
Just a very quick comment on that. Just picking up on Tom's comments, would it be useful for us to have that sort of discussion where we actually have, it could be a separate meeting, it could be part of where we actually sit down and say, this is the picture of what we'd like to see, working with Tom and the team to create that.
I think we need to, but that's how we're relying on information we're getting through, but there's something we need to do to map what we're doing. Viv, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely understand and accept what people are saying, and I think Scrutiny needs to figure out how you want to deal with this. But a lot of the information that you get here, the dashboards, the other presentations, is exactly what goes to the improvement board. It's no different. There isn't a magic thing that's different there. What's shared with you here is what's shared at improvement board, and similar sort of questions and challenges are asked there. I don't know if that helps, but I just wanted to say that.
I think we've really picked that up with a number of the boards about a lot of the scrutiny that's going on elsewhere. I think what we need to do as a panel is map, how are we assured, how are we satisfied that what would be, and I think I keep thinking through my mind, we perhaps need a session where we can go through and map that. And I think there is the opportunity now to do that. There've been some really good work this year, how we can structure that, certainly for the next municipal year. Right, fine. So I think, Richard, we're going to keep it, review of the improvement journey, we're going to keep it on. We just need to think of a way that over the next 12 months, next municipal year, we're doing what we need to do. Sorry, come back up there.
Yeah, you sort of answered, but I was just referring to Viv's comment really about the improvement board. I sort of didn't really recognise that until it was just pointed out. So but sort of done it anyway, haven't we now? But
right.
I mean, some of the stuff we've talked about, the numbers and things, numbers of children, they're outside our control. They're outside the council's control. It's how you respond to those, isn't it? We can't. Nobody in the council or anybody can dictate how many kids need looking after or any of those things. It's just how you respond. It could double. It doesn't mean you've got poor service. No. It means that something's gone out in the community that's caused kids to need. That's a separate thing to me. I don't know if I'm missing the point.
So when Julia said, if we do this piece of work, we're likely to see an increasing number of contacts, and that's a classic bit of. And so your contacts go up, but actually if that quality of the contact is then improved, you should see a reduction in the number of children coming into care. And that's what the things that we're doing, but then we might not be reducing the number of children coming into care. If there's a general trend, all we're doing is it's either staying stable or it's not going up as much as in some other places. So I think there are things we can be doing when we're looking at the data to check the work that's been done is as effective as possible.
Sorry, Chair, I completely agree. I think I understand what you're saying, but actually, our early support strategy, everything we're doing as a partnership does have influence on the amount of children and young people that need to come into care and intervene in early. So I think it's a key point of triangulating the number of looked after children, the number of early support offer that we're putting in, and
Okay. Right. So I think we're going to keep it on. We're going to look at how we can map that as effectively as possible. Item 6, educational outcomes and learning support strategy. We seem to be in a really good presentation on that at the informal panel on 17th of January. I think educational outcomes is something we need to be interested in going forward, and perhaps it's a really good bit of work we can do over the next 12 months to actually Almonbury Community School, that's an opportunity for a group of children whose circumstances change. What's the educational impact for that group of children? And over time, if we can map that over the next, the year 7s, map that over the next 5 years and see, are they getting the results, the opportunities that they really should be doing? I think that's a really good piece of longitudinal work we can be doing. Keep that on. we're going to keep looking at number of children in care, so I don't think we need to dwell on that. I think the future options for our member to be community school, there's a watching brief on that. I think some of the formal stuff, we've addressed the issues that came from the call-in, we've addressed the issues of the, we just need, it's part of our ongoing looking at the best outcomes for the children if we can do that and that way. And as we said, they're learning the lessons, isn't it? It's an opportunity for learn how to do the rest, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Okay. We've already touched quite a lot on performance information in children's services. We're going to keep collecting that information. It's looking at how it's used, how it's collected and how it's used. That needs to stay on. Okay. Some of the email. Right. Are there any other key issues we think we ought to be looking at, or do we want an opportunity to look through the children's plan and bring that back to the next? Sorry. Right. So we've been asked by the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee to look at high needs children. Does that tie in with some of the SEND stuff?
It could be included on
Yes.
I think, so that's a particular group of children that we need to be looking at in terms of, so we'll integrate that into the plan. Right. Any other things we want to be looking at? Right. Brilliant. Let me just take a minute to summarise where we are with that. I think I was just about right. The formal session was slightly shorter than the informal session, but not very much. So, Paul.
We were just quickly chatting. In terms of youth services and what we're now trying to do as a council and the investments, but is that something we should be looking at specifically in terms of initiatives, how we're taking that forward? Because clearly that has, hopefully, I'm sure will do, have a significant impact on a number of the other areas we look at. So I'm not sure. I'm just trying to think, does it fit in with this?
Yeah, it would do. So we can think about how that. Any other? Right. I think. If there are any other things we pick up by looking at the improvement plan, if you sort of either email myself or Helen, probably both of us, and have a chat with us about that, that's fine. Okay. Right, thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance and your contributions. That's been really appreciated. Some really good discussions, some really good outcomes. Our next meeting is on the 17th of April. What time does that start? You're saying your apology. What time are we starting?
I think it's 10 o'clock.
At 10, is that the full? So the formal meeting will be at 11 o'clock. Okay. Thank you, everybody.